Hello, I'm Carl Hein.
And I'm John George.
And we are excited to bring you Cube Effects. We are giving you all the work on a Reputation 5 to 7 minute stand-up routine straight out of my current professional working repertoire.
This is mind-blowing visual magic with a prop that everyone can relate to.
I have performed Cube Effects thousands of times all over the world and on national television, and I can honestly say that this routine has gotten me hired for lots of events and is a real reputation maker.
Only one side solved, the color orange.
We've also included a free copy of John George's How to Solve the Rubik's Cube, which is the DVD that I actually learned how to solve the cube from.
On this DVD, world-renowned cuber Tyson Mao teaches you techniques for the basic, speed, and legitimate blindfold cube solves.
But first, you'll need to get your own cubes.
It made no sense for us to include cubes with this project, seeing how most of you already have your own cubes or your own preferences as to which type of speed cube you like.
For those of you who don't have a preference or are very new to cubing, we have a whole section in the bonus material that talks about where to get cubes, what kind of cubes to get, and how to take care of them.
If you are interested in any type of cube magic, you should really take a look at the bonus footage on Cube Effects.
We have almost a dozen effects as well as tips and ideas from our years of experience performing these routines, and also live performance footage of John George performing his version of my routine. Thanks again for purchasing and enjoy Cube Effects.
We are going to learn Carl Hein's Cube Effects, and I believe we have all of the necessary ingredients here on the table.
That's absolutely right. So this is essentially a 3-phase routine, and it uses 3 cubes, and you want cubes that are speed cubes. So essentially the cubes that can move very smoothly and quickly so that you can do the moves fairly silently and fast. There's going to be a section in the bonus material that talks about the different types of cubes to use or how to take a cube and make it go faster. So for more information on that, refer to the bonus section of the video.
And just for clarity, what cubes are we using?
These particular cubes are Dion 2 Guhong cubes.
Okay.
So they're a version of speed cubes that I typically use for this routine. You're also going to need a paper bag or some way of switching the cubes, and we'll talk about a couple different versions of that also in the bonus material, but what I primarily do for the routine is use paper bags. This is one I've used quite a bit. Sometimes you can use the same bag several times until it starts to get ripped or have holes in it. I like ones where both cubes kind of fit nice and neatly, evenly into the cube. And if you were to open the bag up, you'll see that it's about the same width of the cube as well.
Sure.
Okay. This is the same bag, but it's just kind of a newer one that hasn't been used before, so you can see the same thing. And I also have some bags here too that are a little bit bigger. So you'll see that it's just a little bit bigger, so that when you put the cube in the bag, in a way, it's better. It's also a little bit wider this way, but it makes it, when you're holding on to the cube, maybe a little bit more obvious that there's a cube in the bag, although it also gives more room to hide the cube at the end when you're tossing it. So there's pros and cons both ways. It's whatever you can find or you feel the most comfortable with, basically. All right? So, and then the other thing that you may or may not need, depending upon how you want to do the routine, is the final phase where the cube solves in your hand. You have to find some way of getting the color. If you're using an extra cube, I normally use it with the hat, where I cover with the hat. But of course, you don't have to use a hat. You can use another paper bag that you put over top of the cube.
Or a napkin.
Or a napkin or a handkerchief. Or if you pre-show, and there's different ways we've talked about as well of how to get that color. You don't even need the extra cube, or you don't even need to cover something. So there's different ways of getting it. So don't feel like you have to have a hat or something like that to be able to do the routine.
So we're basically using 3 regular cubes, 1 paper bag, and something to cover this if we go that method.
If you go that method.
And that's
exactly
it.
right. Yeah.
Great.
So what we're going to do here is basically give you an overview of the routine without going to the details of all the moves. And so we'll put all the moves in a section at the end, so you can refer to them. And that way you have the idea of how it all works. And then once you decide what parts you want to do, or if you want to do it all, you can refer to the different types of mixes or false mixes, so you can learn that at that time by itself.
Great.
In this bag, I have the world's most famous toy. Sold more than any other toy in the entire world. Does anybody know what it is? The Slinky. Incorrect. So close, though. Everybody says you're so close, so close. I'll give you a hint. It's also the world's least played with toy. The Rubik's Cube. Right? One time, you're like, never again, right? Can anybody here solve a cube? Do you have any cubers? Anyone? I'm the only person in the room without a life. Fantastic. It's not a joke, sir. It's not a joke. Would you please give it a mix? Give it a few turns. And pass it over to Andrea. Let her give it a few turns as well. All right? Now, if you go on YouTube, you can see people solve the cube very quickly. Some can do it with one hand. Some can do it behind their back. There's even a little Chinese kid that does it with his feet. Your homework assignment, Google juggling Rubik's Cubes. It's freaking amazing. There's a guy who juggles Rubik's Cubes and solves them while he juggles them. I'm going to do something even more impressive. I'm going to solve it only with the power of my mind. I won't touch it. I'll just think about it, and it will solve itself. Pretty impressive. Even a Swedish lady's going to be impressed with that, right? I mean, come on. I've been to Sweden. I've been there. You guys are not easy to impress. But I can tell you have high standards. I'm touching it. That would be cheating, right? That is she was thinking that. I knew it. I won't touch it. I'll just think about it. It will solve itself. I put it in the bag. I snap my fingers, and it comes out solved. Okay, there's another one in the bag. I'll take it this one. That kills a 5-year-old's birthday party. That kills. You guys just aren't drinking enough. People, work with me here. I warned you. Oh. All right, now the way this works in competitions, experts, much like the ladies in the front, mix up a Rubik's Cube. The contestant then gets to examine every side of the cube. The clock starts. When the clock starts, whoever solves it the fastest wins the competition. This makes sense, right? I'm going to snap my fingers. I'm going to try to solve it in under 30 seconds. So I need everybody to count for me. Are you guys ready? Everybody, go. 1, 2, 3.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
16 seconds! Almost my record. My record's 14. Okay. I don't think you understand. See, having all the sides be the same color is the easiest possible solution to solve a Rubik's Cube. It's for amateurs. You have high standards, right? You want to see the good stuff, right? Am I right? If you don't know what you're going for until just seconds before you go for it, it's a little better, isn't it? Yeah. Come on, Andrew, even you're going to be impressed if I can get 2 sides, right? Come on, let it out, man. Let it out. Yeah? Come on. Andrea's holding out for 3 sides. I can tell. 3 sides, yeah? No, she needs 4 to get a applaud. 4? Come on, give me something. It's a Swedish thing. They don't applaud, apparently, I guess. Okay. Every single side, yeah? But I didn't do what I said I was going to do. Without mixing it with 2 hands or even 1 hand, I'm going to attempt to solve it only with the power of my mind. Are you ready? With enthusiasm. Here we go. Captain Scott can't do that. Or can I? Whoa, it's crazy. Crazy. I got it out of the Swede. Yes, a smile. I broke a smile. So we'll take it a step farther. Would you please go ahead and give it a mix-up? In fact, we'll start at the end here and just pass it back towards the middle. And can you help me out here, Stephanie, right?
Yes.
I want you to think of a color on the cube. Don't let anybody else see that color or know what it is, especially the shifty guy sitting next to you, okay? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to put my hat on top of it. Go underneath, put whatever color, your favorite color is on top of the cube. All right, put your favorite color on top, but don't let anybody else see you, especially me, all right? So I'll come over here, go ahead and give it a mix. And we're just going to have a little conversation here while she's doing that. Just let me know whenever you've done that. She's being serious about this. She's taking it very seriously, isn't she? Do you have take your time over there. I get paid by the hour. I'm in no hurry at all. Are you good?
Yes.
Give the cube a mix. Don't solve it. Mix it. Are you satisfied? It's good?
Yeah.
All right. Now, does anybody here know the world record for solving Rubik's Cube?
10 seconds.
10 seconds. That's actually a very good guess, but not correct. It's closer to 6. It's about 5-point-something seconds. All right. Now, to me, this is unbelievable. On a Rubik's Cube, there's over 43 quintillion possible combinations. I know. That's a big number, okay? For those of you who didn't understand that. That number is so big it's hard to imagine the scope of it without an analogy. So I'll give you an analogy. You took a Rubik's Cube like this one, and you started at the beginning of time, and you turned it 1 time every second, starting at the beginning of the universe. You would still be turning this cube today and not have gotten through every single combination on the cube. There are literally more combinations than seconds in the history of the universe. Someone can solve that in 5 seconds. That's freaking unbelievable, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to try that. You're thinking of a color, right? Your favorite color. You put it. We'll show everybody in a second. Can you see your color on pretty much every side of the cube? Maybe not every side, but pretty much every side. Yes. Okay. So what I want you to do, I want you to hold out your right hand right out here in the center so everybody can see it. Put your other hand on top of the cube itself. I don't want to touch it. She chose the color orange. Coincidence? Just saying. When I snap my fingers, I need everybody to say orange.
Orange.
Slowly lift your hand. Do you see any orange?
No.
Do you see any orange? Do you see any orange? Do you see any orange? Only one side saw the color orange. Don't think about it, go crazy, or start growing red hair. That's what happens after a while, you know what I'm saying?
So the first phase of the routine essentially is the bag switch. To be able to bag switch, which will allow you to do the matching effect. So we'll just use one bag here. And what you're going to do is you're going to take one of the cubes, put one of the cubes into the pattern, basically the cube effects pattern is what we're going to call that. And this is what it looks like. Again, we're not teaching this yet, but we'll teach it in a minute. So it looks like the cube is completely mixed on every single side.
It is mixed.
And it is actually mixed,
Yes.
all right? But it's a mix in a way that I know how it's mixed, all right? So this is going to go inside of the bag.
And the orientation on that does not matter.
Orientation does not matter on this cube, all right? So I'm going to do this outside the bag so you can see what it looks like inside the bag, basically,
Great.
all right? So this goes on the bottom. On top of that, I'm going to put a solved cube. I'm going to put one other cube over here.
Great.
All right? Now, when I do this, there's several different methods. Again, we'll talk about this in a second. I have a method where I use a secret electronic device inside of one of the cubes. And if that's the case, if you're going to do that method, we'll talk about that later on as well. This is the cube that has that in there. And I usually will take and put a little mark with a little marker so I can identify that cube later on rather than trying to peel a sticker off. So if you're going to go that route, and again, we'll talk about that later on, that's how I have that on top. And when we filmed it, we did some like that, but some I didn't use this method at all. All right?
Right.
So this is how it is inside the bag. Of course, you can't see this because it's inside the bag. So we'll go ahead and put that in here. And then we'll go on top. And I usually will then just come up and fold the top of this out. So now it's ready to go. And this bag's getting a little old. In fact, it's actually starting to rip here a little bit. So normally I would probably switch this bag out, but we'll continue to use it for this purpose. So I come out, I bring the bag out, and I place it out on the table. Now, when you place it on the table, the two can be either in the front of the bag or they can be in the back of the bag. It's ideal if they're in the front of the bag. So that way, right here, there's two cubes stacked on top of each other. In the back, there's only one cube. I go through the pattern line that you see in the performance, or whatever you prefer to do. I reach in and I pull out the one cube by itself. So there's still two cubes, the mixed cube and a solved cube on top of it, right here on this half of the bag. All right, and that's to the front of the audience. Now, one important point to mention is that you don't want to do this routine if you have a strong backlight.
Yes.
All right, because if you have a strong backlight, they'll be able to see shadows of cubes inside of the bag. So that's the one thing you have to be careful about. You can solve that problem by using your body to block that, or something else. So maybe I have a case and you put this in front of the case so the case casts a shadow on the bag, and that you can still get away with it if you don't have the proper stage lighting to do that. But you do have to be aware of that, otherwise it kind of exposes the secret for this particular method. All right? So this cube comes out, and you give this cube to the audience to have them mix up the cube. One little tip here is when you're giving out a cube to be mixed by an audience, especially if it's a speed cube and it's not a very, if it's a very loose speed cube and you can feel it's loose, make sure you tell them to do it kind of slowly, turn it. You don't want that cube breaking apart in the middle of the routine because someone's going crazy with it. So if you think someone's going to do that, I always try to mention that. All right?
Well, the nice thing also about your routine is that if it did pop apart, you're never doing a complete solve, and this never needs to be solved.
Absolutely.
So it's even
so you
if
can
it
still
did
put
happen,
it back
put
together,
not
it's
worry
really
about
not
it.
a problem.
Great.
Exactly. Okay. So now this is going to go back inside of the bag once you say you're going to solve it. It goes back in the same exact spot you took it from. So the two cubes are in the front, and that's now behind it. So with this orientation, all I have to do is pick the bag up, grab it from the bottom, and my heel of my thumb and my pinky finger is holding the cube in the back, and my index finger and my thumb, the front of my thumb, and the side fingers are holding the cubes in the front. But the top cube that's solved is not being held by anything. So if I turn the bag upside down, it's going to fall free. All right? So if I turn the bag upside down, the cube comes out solved. But the one in the front now is the one that's pre-mixed, and the one that's in the back now is the one that the audience just mixed them trying to switch out. So once you do the gag, you just drop the other cube from the front, and as soon as you drop it, your hand starts to crumble the bag. This goes on the table, and now you just pull up and just squish the bag. The cube is still back here, but it's hidden inside of your hand. So it's all hidden in the back.
Right.
And now you can just toss this on, in this case, in this environment, I would just put it down on the table. All right. Oftentimes I'll have a case, I'll throw it in the case. I've had a situation where there's a garbage can, and I'll toss it in the garbage can. Sometimes if you have a suit, you can just crumble up and put it in your suit pocket. So it really depends a little bit on where you're performing as to how you're going to do that ditch, essentially. All right? So once you've done that, this cube is gone, and now you're left with a cube in your mix pattern and a cube that is solved. So now, my original routine was I would just solve this cube, and it would match a quick solve, because this is set up to do the quick solve, which again we'll talk about at the end of this section. And then I would proceed into the one color thing. I added the matching effect because I think it really does add an extra layer to it at this part of the routine. It gives you more of a skill effect versus a magic effect, but then that turns into the magic effect. All right? And we'll talk also about how using skill first is a really impressive thing to be able to do. So, at this point, I'm going to take this cube and put this cube in the exact same pattern as this one. So I do that as the audience is counting. So it is now in the exact same pattern, so you can see that it's in the exact same pattern on every single side. Once I get it in that pattern, they're continuing to count, I then do a fake mix. So this is also going to be explained under the false mixing section, all right? And this is the false mix that I use. There are other false mixes that you could also use as well. You can come up with your own false mixes. For example, the Cube DVD has a great one-handed quick solve that can also be used as a false mix. If you do it two of them in a row, the way he shows you, you're just going to go right back to it. So he does it from a solve pattern to a solve pattern. But here, if you start off with a mix where it seems like it's mixed, it just ends up mixed. It looks like you're just mixing the cube.
Sure.
So any kind of false mix, or even if you wanted to, you could do it from a different orientation, the same move to get to here. Just do that twice, do it, and then reverse it, and you still end up, and it looks like you're just mixing the cube.
Exactly.
Right? So you don't even have to do the other false mix. You can just use that one technique to do it.
And, I mean, if you're a cuber and you know an algorithm,
Right.
you could just do an algorithm.
Absolutely. So it's just some sort of false mix. But all that's doing is it's giving extra time so that when I'm doing it, it looks like this is only about, I think, what's 4 or 5 moves away from being solved, really. This one here is the same, but I want it to seem like it's a lot more moves away. So it looks like I want it to seem like I'm really moving fast. I'm doing a lot of things to get it from solved to this position.
Sure.
So that way it's more impressive when I actually do the solve a little bit later on. Now you take a different approach, and again, when you explain your routine, we'll talk more about that approach when we do your routine. So at this point, I usually don't like it to be matching when I put it out. So I try to intentionally orient it so the same color isn't on top here. Okay, so this case is white, my usual key, but I want it to not be matching. So then I can take it, reorient it, and then I can show that it matches. An important thing that you just mentioned to me is that it looks a little clearer. I like to bring it together, show it here, but then bring it apart just a little bit because it's a little bit easier to see that matching effect if it's a little bit farther apart versus...
It's hard to see where one starts and stops.
Exactly, right. So now you can show every single side, and every single side matches.
Exactly.
Right? So that's the end of that phase.
So this is phase 1, and if we were to talk about the difficulty level, wouldn't you agree that this would be considered easy, beginner, a basic part of what you're providing?
Absolutely. It's quite easy to do. All you have to know is how to get it into this pattern, or really any pattern that looks mixed that you know what that pattern is. And the bag switch is really not technically difficult at all. So almost anybody can do this routine. The only problem is if you get out of your pattern, you have to know how to solve the cube to get it back after the show or whatever that is.
Sure.
You can do that by taking the cube apart, also we're going to talk about that later on the cube as well, on the DVD and bonus material, how to take the cube apart and other ways of solving it if you don't feel comfortable solving the cube yet. Now, as the routine goes on, it's going to get a little bit more difficult, but I also want to mention that John's version of this routine that's in the bonus section is actually easier than my version. All right, so that's also something else that you can look into if you're more of a beginner to still be able to progress to some of the other phases, and you might even prefer that over mine. It's really a preference,
Sure.
how you look at it. All right, so that's phase 1, to have the cubes match, and it's a really strong effect and not difficult to do.
We're on phase 2 now, and why don't you summarize where we're at and what phase 2 is all about?
Well, at the end of phase 1, you have 2 cubes that are both in the cube effects pattern, so that they're both in a situation where I can get them solved very quickly. All right, and they're both in the exact same pattern because we just did the effect where they all match.
Right.
From this position, you can go in a lot of different directions. So one of the versions that I did in Performance in Magic Castle is where I solved them both instantaneously in my hands, one in each hand at the same time. All right, and then I put them down, and now they're both solved. You can also do it individually, where you pick up one and you solve that one, and then you pick up the other one and you solve that one a different way or the same way. Sometimes I'll do it where I'll take the cube and I'll put it in the spectator's hand, and as it goes into their hand, it solves as it goes into their hand. And there's lots of different ways that you can do these solves. So, for example, you can do it under the cover of a hat, and now it's really quickly, it's mixed, and now it's solved. Or you can do it under a silk or just in your hands. There's lots of different ways we can talk about that. So, again, to get into this pattern, that's going to be basically the cube effects pattern. And then it's going to be the cube effects solve, which is a one-handed solve with the right hand as well as a one-handed solve with the left hand. So watch this first so you have an idea of the different things you can do with it. Then learn the solves from that section of the DVD. And then come back, and now you practice the moves in the right, basically, choreography with the effect that you want to create.
Yeah, so just to be very clear,
Yeah.
phase 2 is taking a cube that has the premix, both of them,
Right.
and using one of many methods to get both of them solved.
Exactly. Well, the methods are the same, but the choreography of the methods
choreography.
is going to be different
Exactly.
depending on how you want to do it.
Perfect.
Okay? So basically, the 4 moves, essentially, that you're going to need to learn is, 1, the cube effects mix pattern. So this is what that looks like. Again, we'll explain that in detail in a second. So the cube looks completely mixed. Once you're there in that pattern, you want to be able to do a fake mix, so that looks like you're mixing the cube more, but nothing changes. This cube still exactly matches the other cube.
Sure.
Okay? So that fake mix, again, looks like this, and you can use any kind of fake mix that you want, but we'll teach you one on this DVD, the cube effects fakes, false shuffle, essentially, or fake mix. Okay? Now, you're also going to know how to solve that. So you can do that with 2 hands or 1 hand, but it's different from your right hand than from your left hand. So what it looks like from the right hand is you have this situation where you can see 3 sides, but it's actually in a pretty mixed or unmixed state. Even though it's still mixed, it's pretty unmixed, but you can't see that from that position on the cube, okay? So the one-handed move in the right hand looks like this, all right? And then you have to do one more move at the end of it to actually complete the solve. And we'll talk about that in a second. Basically, I'm doing a few moves to get halfway there, and then my index finger is doing 2 moves to get to where it appears to be solved, and then I have one more move to do where it actually is solved. That's usually a hidden move after they already think that it's been solved. All right? And again, don't try to learn the details of this from this section. This is just an overview of that.
Sure.
All right? In the other hand, it's a little bit different. In my left hand, it's the same thing. I'm doing a few moves to get to this pattern, but it's a slightly different technique for being able to get it from there to that solve position and then to the last phase. All right? So there's basically 4 different things we're going to be teaching you in the up-close, over-the-shoulder section. And once you have those, then you'll be able to do all the choreography we're about to teach you for different methods of solving the Rubik's Cube. So now that you have an overview of the different types of things you can do, let's get into the specifics of how to do some of these choreography of different types of solves.
Sure.
All right, so I'll put this back into the Cube Effects pattern. So now they should both be matching, as if we just came out of the first phase where we had two completely matching cubes. Right, so the first thing I did in the performance of the Magic Castle is I solved them both simultaneously on one hand.
In two hands.
I'm sorry, simultaneously in two hands, but at the same time, right? So what you're going to need to learn how to do is go and learn the right-handed solve and the left-handed solve. All right? And once you've mastered that, it does take a little bit more practice to be able to do them both simultaneously, because both hands are doing a different action, which is not the easiest thing to learn. It's going to take some practice to be able to do that and then have them solve instantaneously. Some tidbits on the choreography is when your hands come across, I like to be able to have them have a nice little mix there that gives that moment of when the magic happens, essentially. Right. So this big action of coming across, covers the turning that you're going to be doing in your hands. When you get to this position, bam, they see that. Now, there's still some that's going to need to be done on the sides, but that's done as you come out. So I'll go ahead and show you how that works. What I do is I'm usually talking to them, and I go ahead and just put the first cube halfway into the pattern in my right hand. I then pick up my left cube, and I turn that and do the first few phases just with my left hand alone. That's the way I personally do it. You could, of course, do the opposite if you wanted to do it and do this one with both hands and this one with one hand,
sure.
Okay? But now they're both in essentially the same pattern, okay? Now, I'm sitting down, so this is kind of flashing here, but if I'm standing up, it's going to be down like this at the bar. I'm just kind of holding them. Sometimes I'll come over and I'll hold the patterns like this, or before I even get to this section, for example, another thing that I'll do as well is have this one be completely mixed, have this one be halfway there, this one still in the mixed pattern. That way I can use this to cover that mixed as I maybe roll my sleeves up. Take this cube, roll my sleeves up here, and that's a nice little subtlety that makes it look like the cubes are all mixed and I'm not just holding them in this type of position for a very long time. So having both of them together like that really looks like the cubes are mixed, but I'm still halfway done with this one.
Sure. Okay. And your fingers, let's be clear here, on, like, let's say, like the green and the blue are covering this to make it look like there's more pattern than there really is.
Exactly. So if I would have moved these fingers, you'd see a much more clear pattern there, right? Yeah. Okay. Whereas once my fingers cover just those outer two columns or layers, now you can't see a pattern.
And it looks like it's
and
totally
you see
mixed.
the top one. So as opposed to like the Enchanted Cube, we only see one side. With this one, you see apparently three sides of the cubes that are mixed, which I think is an advantage to this particular method.
Sure.
The disadvantage is it takes a few seconds longer to get to that solved pattern, but with the right misdirection, it's pretty much the same depending on how you do it.
Sure.
All right. So now I can talk about doing something, a Rubik's Cube with one hand, or having someone do it with one hand, or I just do it as I'm saying something else, but now I'm set with both hands to be able to do it. So in slow motion, I'm going to be doing this move with one hand, the other move with the left hand, and then
boom,
bam, and now they're both solved. But they're still not, because I have one more move to do.
But the audience thinks they are.
But the audience does, as long as you hold them back, not too far, because you want the people in front to be able to see, but you don't want the people on the sides to flash this as much. All right, so you have to be a little careful with your angles there. Even if someone does see that, it still looks like it's almost solved, and then it is solved. So you still get an effect. It's just a different effect. It depends on what you want to get out of the routine. All right, so you're here, and now you're going to do the last move as your hands come out to show the cubes like this. So that, again, that big motion covers the small motion, and because two hands are moving simultaneously, your brain can't follow both of those actions at the same time.
Right.
All right? So you end there, and now both cubes are solved, and you can stop right there if you want. Right?
Right.
And then, or you can proceed to phase 3. A couple other options for solving it, all right? So, again, we'll put them both back into the patterns. They're both back in the same Cubitics pattern. Another technique would be to do just the right-handed solve. And I like to do the right-handed solve just as I wave the cube in the air like this. So as I wave the cube in the air, I'm doing the first two moves, that motion still hiding this. And then I find, and we were just working on this together, that bringing up the other hand and doing the last move together with both hands really helps hide that last move a little bit better. Okay? So, again, the choreography of that is I get halfway there. I do the first two with my index finger, and then it solves itself.
Right.
Other options are you can also throw the cube in the air. So as you're doing the mix, you solve it, they see it solved, and the last one done as I throw it in the air, and now it comes down. The problem with that is if you have a louder cube, it's going to make a sound. If you have a very silent cube, that works really well because they can't see it, but they can hear it if it's a louder cube. So if you have a silent cube, that's a great option. You can also, of course, do that behind your back. So you can have the cube mix, come behind your back, throw it over, and catch it, and now you have the cube completely solved.
Right.
All right. It's going to take a little bit more practice to do that, but it's certainly possible using the exact same moves that you'll learn in the right-handed quick solve.
Sure.
Now you can achieve a little bit of a different effect with the left-hand solve because it's a little bit faster in how you get to that one side, all right? So with the left-hand solve, because of the way the technique works, instead of having to move your index finger twice with the right hand, you could just do basically 2 moves at once to get to that one-side solve. So that looks like this when you do it, okay?
Right.
So it's a little bit faster to get into that. If you still have to do this last phase where either you toss it in the air as you turn it, do this, or shake it some more as you change it, it's kind of, again, your preference on what you feel is best suited for you to get to that position. So one way that I'd use this one is sometimes I'll use it like this, where I will come over with my right hand, and as I do the move, I come over, do the move with my left hand, and now I bring my left hand over to wave, and that solves the first side. And then my right hand actually now solves the last bit of that to get the last one done. All right? So that's another option that you can do. So I'll do that again. And again, don't try to learn this until you've gone and you learn the left-hand solve. Then come back and figure out the one that you want to do and just work on that one, all right? That way you can work on just the moves alone without having to have all the additional things going on, all right? So this is, again, just the overview. So getting into this position, so now it's in the halfway solve position. My hand comes over. As it comes over, I grab the cube. My left hand then continues the wave. It's still here, but now my right hand does it as I come over and I wave to the front. I can continue to wave, but it's already solved. I'm not really doing anything at that point. It's already done and solved. All right? In other ways, you can use either the right hand or the left-handed method to solve under the cover of something. So, done under a hat, for example, if I have my hat here, I can have the cube apart. The farther apart you have the arms, the more that bigger motion covers it.
Yep.
And as I'm coming in, I'm doing the first move, the second move. Now it's covered, and then I can immediately open it up, right?
Right.
And now as I come over to show it, I can do the unmix completely. And it feels like it goes under, and for a split second, it's solved. So that's one way of doing it. There's different choreographies you can play with, whether you want to do it like this or like that, or if you want to give it a moment and then do it. It's kind of your preference as well as how you want to do that. It can be done, again, under a scarf. And I'm going to do that at more of a speed so you can see what it looks like at speed. So I'll perform for the camera here, and as you come over, like this. All right? And so it's still in this position, but then as I come over, I'm just going to do it like that, and it's solved. Or you can do this. You're here, comes over, it's now solved. The hat goes on your head. As you come back, you put it down, and you're like in that position.
Nice.
Okay? Your hand can also be used to cover instead of your hat. So you're in this position, your hand comes over, and as you're bringing your hand over, your hand's turning, that's hiding it from seeing it solved. But now as soon as I come over, it's solved. That one side is now mixed, and then I can use the other hand as I do the final move.
The one side is solved.
The one side is solved, yeah. Well, the one, and the front and the back is solved.
Yes.
Just that middle layer is not.
Okay.
It's one move away, and you're here. So again, that looks like this. So I'm halfway there in the halfway position. As I come over, you can pause. You can do it immediately. You can wipe it however you want your effect to be created, basically, right? But now, because you're only seeing that one side, they only see that one side, and then you place the cube down, and now it's completely mixed.
Nice. And
Right.
I think you did. You had a version where you do it under the table too. Didn't you show me that once?
I don't like going under the table because that way you can maybe switch it or something like
Okay.
that. But if the situation was right, it's certainly something that you could do for sure.
Sure.
The Cube DVD has some other really interesting versions because he's got a really great one-handed mix and solve, and he's got lots of really cool little effects on there. One that uses a mirror, for example, that I really highly recommend checking out his DVD because it'll give you some more ideas to play with, basically.
Great.
But this is most of the ways that I do it. I think that's pretty much covered everything. You can toss it behind your back, solve them simultaneously, one in each hand. You can do a wave. the spectator one's kind of nice too. So if I take the cube here and say, look, you did a pretty good job mixing. How quickly do you think it would take you to solve this cube? So now I'm holding it up like this.
Right.
So I'm going from this position to this position. So now this is exposed, but it's exposed to only those people behind me. Hold your hand out. Now, as they say hold your hand out, I do one move, the second move, and as I come up and place it in their hand, the whole thing is done.
Right.
All right. So bam, it just solves in their hand in a split second, and then you give them the applause cue. Oh my gosh, you did it! You did magic, or you solved it in a second. All right. So that's another way I do it as well, which is really, especially for walk around, it's a really fun little way of doing it. So again, so just go ahead and hold your hand out for me. Go ahead and hold that, and then boom, it's just solved in your hands.
Nice. So. And I got to say that I've seen you do that for other people, but it really is more effective having to myself. It really looks magical right here.
Right, as opposed to seeing it happen to someone else.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
The other thing is, I don't think you mentioned, not only can you do the one hand over here or toss it in the air, but you were doing something where you were tossing one in the air. They were thinking that one was going to solve.
That's a good point. So that's another way I do it as well. So when I get to this position, where both cubes are matching, like this, I have one of them that now I'm halfway into the solve, right? Take this one, and I throw this one in the air, and as it's throwing in the air, I'm going to do this move right here. So now I have only the one side that's able to be viewed. So as you toss it in the air, you come down, you're looking at this one, that goes on the table, and as you look over here at this one, they see it as it's solved, and that's when you can do the unmix for the final one. And that's a really great moment for a live audience. I wouldn't do that on television because you can rewind that and you can see that. Because it's done right out in the open without any kind of motion, right?
Sure.
But with all that misdirection of you looking up, them looking up, it's a great thing. It's a great moment. The important thing there, I think, though, is that making sure that is far away from your body. So if you're going to do that method, you don't want to be here because then it can seem like maybe you just switch the cube quickly. Whereas if it's out here or out on the table like this, as you're behind the table throwing in the air, this really doesn't seem like anything could have happened. You couldn't have done anything in that period of time, and then it's solved like that.
And then you would use one of the other methods we already talked about.
Yeah, so at that point, another choreography-wise, another thing that I do as well is I'll do it like this, where I just shake the cube. So you're shaking it, it solves itself, and as I come down, I place that right on top of the other one, and you get this nice view of all of them being solved.
So essentially, that's phase 2, is we use we use 2 of those methods in any way or order that you like, and we end up with 2 solved cubes.
Absolutely. Okay. And so once you have the 2 solved cubes, you can stop right there, or you can continue on to the phase 3, which is where only one color is going to solve in their hand. In
terms of cube effects and the 3 phases, you would agree phase 2 is the most difficult of the magic that's on this DVD.
Depending upon which of those methods you're using. Obviously, the 2-handed method takes a lot more practice than just the 1-hand method where you're given a little shake.
Sure.
It takes practice, but not nearly as much to have that same amount of choreography to get that down. It takes a lot more practice to do it simultaneously on both hands.
All right.
You know, and of course, you can also just play this here as a straight solve as well. Right? So another possibility, because you are in this type of position where you're so many moves away, you can actually pretend just to do a real solve. So you can just do the fake mix I already showed you, do the fake mix, and then once you get down to the very end, just do the actual unmix with both hands, and you solve the cube.
Right.
So you can practice just solving that one behind your back almost legitimately, and then the other one you can do a quick solve with.
Right.
Right? So you don't have to, there's lots of different ways that you can use your imagination for whatever effect that you want to get out of it in the end.
Right. To ultimately get to here.
That position.
Excellent. We just finished up with phase 2. We're on phase 3. We should have 2 solved cubes, and we're moving on to phase 3.
Awesome. So phase 3 is essentially the one side of a mixed up cube is going to solve in a spectator's hand. So at this point, I will pass out one of the cubes to be solved. And a little tip on this is I always put it into my preset pattern first, and that gets it to it actually is all mixed. Because if you just hand a layperson a cube that's solved, it's actually pretty difficult for them to mix it where it gets to this position.
Yes.
So anytime I pass out a cube to be solved, I always do that.
When you say gets to this position, you mean...
A mixed up position. Yeah, because a lot of laymen, if you take a cube...
They'll make it look like like this.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Right?
not that impressive when
No.
you go to solve it in a moment because it looks like it's almost already solved,
Right.
right? So I always put it in my pattern anytime I pass out a cube to be solved. All right, so now you can give that to them. They can legitimately mix it. In this case, we'll leave it here so we don't have to worry about solving it. But they can mix it up any way they want. It doesn't matter how it gets mixed up. Actually, in this case, go ahead and mix it up, actually. Okay?
So I'm mixing it.
Okay. All right, and so now the cube ends up completely mixed, legitimately mixed. Okay? So, now what's going to happen is I'm going to take this cube, I'm going to solve only one side incorrectly. And what I mean by that is only one side is going to be solved, like green, for example. All right, so all going to be green, but these sides here are all going to be mixed. Normally, when you solve a cube, when you solve that bottom, this is also solving and matching the centers.
Right.
Right? You don't want that because when you hold it in your hand, you don't want them to see this layers solved. You want it to be completely mixed except for that one color.
Sure.
Now, before we get into how we do that, it's important to figure out how do you know what color they're going to say. All right? So we'll talk about some different methods for being able to do that. The first method is you don't know. All right? You're in the middle of it, they've just mixed it, and you say something to the effect of, so do you have a favorite color on the Rubik's Cube?
Sure.
What color? What's your favorite color?
I like blue.
Oh, blue. Okay, interesting. My favorite is red. Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. Before we go any farther, do you know what the world record is for solving a cube? And now you proceed with the routine. You set it up for the color they just named. Now, and then you just call it. Now you can see your favorite color on every side. Hold the cube in your hand. Everybody say blue, and then it turns into blue.
Right.
So you don't need any kind of magic device or any kind of technique to be able to secretly get that color. It's a super strong effect just like that, and I do that quite often like that, especially when I do strolling magic.
All right.
All right? Of course, it's going to be a little bit stronger or a lot stronger, depending upon the situation, if they don't even know that you know what the color is. Because it's a bit stronger if it solves in their hand and they had no idea that you knew what color they're thinking of. That make sense?
It does.
Okay. So, again, if I'm doing this on video, like television or video, I'll usually pre-show that. So there's no hint of how I got that color. So I can have someone else ask for their favorite color. I can ask them their favorite color beforehand. In the routine, it makes it seem like they're just thinking of it. You can do a center tear, a paper tear. You can do some kind of electronic device to get information. Any way that you can use to get a color secretly, you can use that to your advantage and get a step ahead. And lots of ways of doing that. One of the techniques that I use, there's several major techniques that I use. One is I use electronics that's built into the cube. Okay, so what I did on the DVD, so in the performance of the Magic Castle, I did some performances. The one that actually aired, though, was one that I did with pre-show. I also will do it with electronics.
So for that pre-show,
Right.
what did
So
you
I
do?
wanted to show how it would look with pre-show versus not having that, because the electronics are completely optional. It's not something you need to have.
Right.
So with the pre-show, that lady was there in the front. In the beginning, I was talking with them throughout the show. Before I went into this particular part of the routine, before I started the show, I was just conversing with them at the bar. And I said, "Oh, do you have a favorite color?" And then I got that color. We'll come back to it later on. Just make sure you mention that color later on, right?
Right.
So when I go and have them name their favorite color, they put that color on top. Now, I could use the electronic cube the exact same way, but I didn't in that situation because I wanted to show what it would look like without it. I didn't even really need that second cube. I could have just said, put the cube in her hand, not even mention the other cube, think of her favorite color.
Right.
Right? And then she names her favorite color.
But using the second cube is a nice way for the rest of the audience
Yeah,
to...
it's also nice to be able to match. At the end, you show orange, and the orange only one side is a nice little matching type of effect
And
that adds to it.
For the perception of the rest of the audience is, how could you have known?
Exactly. How could you possibly have known that, right? So that works out really well. If you're using that pre-show method, sometimes it will happen that they'll forget, or they'll try to mess with you and name a different color.
Right.
Okay? So there's another way of doing it where you don't know the color, or they don't know the color, but you force a color on them once you've already solved it. Okay? So this is kind of my out. So if I solve a color and it's in your hand, let's just say it's blue. So I'm going to go ahead, right? So I'll just go ahead and solve a blue side here real quick. All right, and this is, of course, not that difficult to do because you're only doing just the blue. You're not trying to match any colors. And now I've got blue solved pretty quickly, just that one side. And you'll see that these here are all pretty much mixed up, all right? So now, when I'm here, once I get that, I then put it into the Cube FX pattern, minus the very last twist. I don't do the very last twist because there's no need to break up that final side, all right? So I'm in that pattern. Blue is my key color. As you do it, I'm going to do the move. We'll go over this in more detail in a second. This goes in their hand. It's on top. So the blue is solved. Let's just say that I say, name your favorite color. I've pre-showed you.
And I say red.
And you say red. Okay. My response would be really, your favorite color is red. Well, my favorite color is green. But I want to make this random.
Right.
Okay? So now I can still guide it in the direction of blue. And the way I do that is I take the other cube that is solved, and I do this show where I can hold the opposite corners of the cube and keep that one side hidden. So as I go like that, you should not be able to see blue. No blue, right?
Right.
Right? Because I'm just holding it by the bottom end and the top end and spinning it with that blue color on the bottom. So if you say stop at any point in time,
Stop.
right here, that blue is on the bottom. I can just place it down, and blue is also on the bottom here. So when they lift their hands, look, this is interesting. The bottom color is blue. Only one side solved the color blue.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, another option is I use that same force to go this direction. So your hand's on top of it. I do the move. I'm just turning the cube, like so.
Stop.
All right? You said that would be on the bottom. So if you would have said just a little bit later,
Stop.
I would have had to do it like this by just turning it. Now it's on top.
Right.
So now I would say, look, you stopped me on the color blue. Everybody say blue. Lift your hand. No blue, no blue, no blue, no blue. Only one side solved the color blue.
All right.
So that's an out that I always have no matter what happens. If my electronics messes up, or if they call the wrong color that I've pre-showed, or whatever the situation is, I can always use that as an out. So whatever color they name that's not the right color, I name a different color as my favorite color, and then I use that to force the third color that does match.
Got it.
All right? So a final option to be able to get the color is to use an electronic cube of some sort to be able to get a step ahead and know what color they're thinking of, okay? So this particular cube has an electronic device built into it that's made by Craig Filicetti from Pro Mystic. I will be selling a deluxe package that includes cubes and all the electronic transmitter receiver, as well as the paper bags for the cube as a deluxe package. So if you don't want to go out and get your own cubes and you want to do the electronic version, you can get that only from my website. It does use authorized Pro Mystic devices, and it's only available at carlhine.com.
Great.
All right. The way I do that, just so you understand how it kind of works, if you want to go this route, is that I usually will mark this cube with a little bit of a marker in just the center and the white. That way I know that that's my electronic cube, so I make sure it doesn't get mixed in the very beginning. So I explained that when I did the bag. That's the one that's going to be on top. So that way I can also, at this point, when at the end of the other routine, make sure this is the one that someone goes to think of a color. The other one is the one that it goes to have them be mixed. So once you do that, I say go ahead and think of a color. I usually just say think of color. I don't say favorite color. I say choose a color and put it on top. If I'm doing pre-show, then I say what's your favorite color? Think of their favorite color. Put that color on top.
Right.
All right. So with the electronics, put whatever color you're on top. We're going to cover it up. I'm going to show everybody what that color is in a moment, but not yet. I don't want anybody else to see the color but you. And the reason why I use that is I don't want you to just change your mind. Sometimes people will change their mind or forget what color they chose. That way you're committed to a specific color. Just think of it over and over again in your head. So that gives you a little bit of justification for why you're using the cube and the hat or the scarf to cover it.
So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Pro Mystic
Right.
device, without getting into the details, because I'm not really sure what Craig would want us
Right.
to tell, but basically there is something in this cube that is telling him right now, as we speak,
Yeah.
that this is orange facing up.
Exactly. All right. So, and no matter what color it is, I can know pretty quickly what color is going to be on top. So that way I can get ahead. Now, normally you'd use this to try to say, well, you're thinking of the color green, right?
Yeah.
To me, I act like when I pull the hat off, I'm knowing the color for the first time. I'm not trying to say I know the color. I just use it to get one ahead.
Sure.
So it's, I think, a little bit more deceptive as an electronic device. And even magicians that are familiar with that don't catch on to that because I'm not using it in the way that most people use that type of secret device. So once I get the color and someone's thinking of it, I can now solve that color, right?
Right.
get it into their hands, right?
Right.
In this case, it would be blue, so blue would be on top over here. Blue would be in their hands. Then I can lift the hat up, show that's the color blue. Everybody snap your fingers, say blue. They lift their hand, no blue, which I like this build of showing no blue. That it starts to get that reaction, that drama building, rather than just going like this.
Yeah.
Okay? It's much stronger that way. So no blue, no blue, no blue, no blue. And then everything matches the color blue.
Nice.
Okay?
And if they want to, I mean, I definitely think using the Pro Mystic device in a cube is a great way to go. If you already have a Pro Mystic device, like the color, is it, what's
Well,
it
he's
called?
got a keychain that's a
Got a
Rubik's
keychain,
Cube,
I
and
assume?
also like a TV Magic Cube type set where it's a little box and just a cube that's like small, a little smaller than this, but just solid. It's not
Yeah.
a cube, it's just solid sides of different colors that he can make match the colors of Rubik's Cubes. It doesn't come
Yeah.
that way normally, but you can get it made that way to match. And so those are great for walk around. So a lot of times I'll use those versions for walk around if I wanted to use that method.
Right.
So I have one cube and that small device that I can use to get the color. So I can walk up to a table with the cube already in my pattern, do some fake mixes, do a fast solve, right?
Yeah.
Do a fast solve, it's solved. They can mix it up. I get the color, do the one-handed solve in their hand, and that's a great walk-around version of this effect. I don't do all the other matching stuff, but I can do just this final effect. You can also do just this final effect. And that's the advantage of that is you don't have to be able to solve the cube in between your performances.
Right.
So if you're walking around, you have a cube that's legitimately mixed. You've ended with the blue. It gets mixed up again. The next performance, you don't have to solve it. You just walk up, have them think of a color, do a center tear, use the electronics, whatever method you want to use, put the color they have, you do that effect, and then you move on. And then you can do the same thing again. So that doesn't require you to have to solve the cube other than that one side.
Sure.
All right?
Right.
So let's talk a little bit before we wrap this up, how to do that one-sided solve, because it's a little bit different than other types of, it's a slightly bit different than the normal way of doing it.
Okay.
All right? So just give me a color. It doesn't matter.
So we're going to go with orange.
We're going to go with orange. Okay. So I got kind of lucky because we already have orange partially solved. So I know we said this earlier, but I'll emphasize it again. All I'm trying to do here is solve just the orange side, but without solving the first layer.
Right.
Now, if you watch the How to Solve the Cube DVD, it'll teach you how to get and solve the cross and then the corners and the moves you need to do that. But it's actually not too difficult to be able to do. And I'll give you a general range now, but if you're not familiar with the cube, refer to the DVD. It's going to make it much easier for
Yes.
you, okay? And the reason why I want to teach this now, because it's a little bit different than how he does it, because he's matching colors that I don't need to match, and I don't want to match for this method. So the first thing you're going to do, if we're solving orange, is to get a cross here. So let's make this just a little bit more difficult, like this. So there's only the orange center. So you find your orange center first. Now the hard part about this, it's not difficult to do it. It's a little bit difficult to do it while you're performing, so it doesn't seem like you're solving the cube.
Right.
That's kind of the hard. And sometimes you get lucky and it's very quick, and other times you're like, oh crap, I messed it up, and it takes a little bit longer to be able to do it. So you have to be able to cover that with some sort of technique so it doesn't seem like you're actually solving it. So I'm going to, first of all, looking for any oranges that are in the centers, the center positions. Those are the four that need to be moved around here. So with the color orange, we're looking for the orange centers first. Now, I'm going to try to position them so that I can get them all in the shape of a cross here on top. And again, you can learn the basic techniques from this from the How to Solve the Cube DVD. The difference here is, though, that I'm not trying to match the centers. So normally, you'd try to match this orange with the yellow in the center here, so that it would solve. But I don't want that. And if it happens, it happens.
Right.
But I'm not trying to go for that. I'm only concerned about orange, which makes it much easier because you're not trying to analyze more than one thing. You're only focusing on how to get an orange to this position.
Right.
So it's a little bit faster and easier to get to. All right? So now I have, let's say, these two here. So this one, if I just turn to the side, that'll move up. And this one here can be moved over, and now I have a cross, and I got lucky, and I got two extra ones. And that happens quite often when you do this, all right? As a side note, if you're going, you have to go for a specific color. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. But if you're going to do the method where you're definitely going to force a specific color, you can get back a mixed cube and look, oh, there's a lot of white here. I'm just going to go straight for white, and that's the color I'm going to force, right? As opposed to green. I'd be way farther ahead there, right?
Right.
So if you're going to use that method, you can start off and save yourself some time by choosing the color you want that's easiest to do, okay? Now all I have to do is get these two in. So I'm looking, again, in this case I don't have this situation, but I'm just only looking for orange. I'm not trying to match any colors up. I'm just trying to get this orange down into that pattern with this 1, 2, 3, up, with up, over, and down
Yeah, up, over,
type
down.
of pattern. Again, what you can learn on the how to solve the cube. And now you'll see that that orange is solved, but the other layers are not solved around it. And that's the position you want to be in. As soon as you're in that position, you're now going to do the cube effects mix, the exact same effect, but I'm going to start with that orange facing me, so that way the audience can't see it. So
Right.
the camera can't see it, you can't see it from this position, but I'm looking right at orange. So now I'm going to do it where I'm breaking up the orange. Every time I turn it, I'm only breaking up that orange line. And I don't do the last move. Normally, with the full solve, you'll have 3 in a row here. So you do 1 extra twist to get to that position. I don't do that extra twist because it's not necessary to do that. And it's a little bit confusing without that extra pattern to know exactly which way to do the twist.
Sure.
So now the only thing I need to worry about, this can go out. I can do any kind of fake mixes I want if I want to. All I have to do is solve that orange. So let's talk about presentation now. As I'm getting to this orange, let's mix it up. Let's name another color. So name any color you want.
We'll go with green.
Green. So the way I present that, and if you watch my presentation of it, you'll see kind of how my wording kind of matches the actions that I'm doing. So as I get it back, they've just mixed the cube. I now have to have some sort of pattern line that gets them thinking about something else as I'm fiddling with the cube. I don't want it to look like I'm solving, I'm just fiddling with the cube.
Right.
All right? Now what I just did there is I moved the green in the right position. But I didn't just do it, it was here and I moved it to there. I didn't do it like this. I did it like that.
Right.
All right? So I'm moving it back and forth. It looks like I'm just fiddling with the cube. You're just talking, you're just playing with the cube.
Right.
But I'm casually, constantly looking down, and sometimes I'll give it like just a secret cube as I'm making a gesture. So I make a big gesture to point to someone, and now I've got another 2 solved, right? So that's something you kind of have to practice and find what works best for you. What movements work best to you to kind of hide that. And I do that in normally one kind of set pattern line that I kind of always say. Anybody know how long it takes to solve a Rubik's Cube? What the world record is for solving a Rubik's Cube? What do you think it is? Right? 4.5 seconds. And you can say whatever you want, but I'm just trying to get as close as possible to that cross pattern within that set line as I can.
Okay.
Okay? So here I'm not quite there yet. I have one more to do, which I can get there very quickly. And now the other line I have is, once I get to that section where I talk about how long, the analogy for how many combinations are on the cube, that's when I say, if I were to start the beginning of time and turn it 1 time every second, I would still be turning this cube today, and I would not have gotten to every single combination. That's when I'm actually solving it, but very slowly, 1 step at a time, and not looking at it as much as possible.
Right.
So I look at it, but now I'm engaging them. I kind of have memorized a few moves to be able to get it to that position. Now you can see I'm only 1 away.
Right.
Oftentimes I can get all the way there and then get into my pattern before I finish. Sometimes I can't, like let's just say right now, then I'll add an extra line. Like, well, it takes me a little bit longer. It takes me about 15 minutes. Just watch.
And now you're done.
And now I'm done.
You're already.
And I can slow the timing of that down and stretch that down, or it takes me about 15 minutes. I'm just solving it. But it seems like to them, it just kind of extends that joke out a little bit more.
Sure.
So you have some leadway there, but I'm almost done. It's so close, or sometimes I already am done. It just depends on how long it takes me to solve at that time. But now I'm in the pattern, ready to go.
Why don't you show us that at speed? I'll give it a mix here,
Okay.
and
So someone's thinking of a color, in this case, let's say orange.
all right.
Right, so they're thinking of the color orange, it's under the hat, or you get the information any way that you want to get it. All right, the cube comes back. I am now looking at the cube, and as I'm saying this, I'm now citing this. So that speed is basically, does anybody here know the world record for solving a Rubik's Cube?
No.
No. Take a guess. What do you think that record would possibly be?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Oh, it's very close. All right. It's actually a little bit less than that. Try again.
10 seconds.
10 seconds, all right? 10 seconds. It's actually less than 10 seconds. It's about 4.5 seconds. Now, to me, that's absolutely unbelievable. On a cube, there are over 43 quintillion possible combinations on a Rubik's Cube. That number is so big it's hard to even imagine without an analogy.
So you got the cross done.
I got the cross done, okay?
Right.
It's so hard to believe without an analogy. So I'll give you an analogy. If I were to take a Rubik's Cube like this one, and I were to start at the beginning of the universe and turn it one time every second, starting at the beginning of time, I would still be turning this cube today, and I would not have gotten to every single combination on the Rubik's Cube. Now, I'm here.
Right.
Almost done. 2 more I have to do, but I've already spotted where one of them is, and it's in the right position.
Great.
Okay? Now, it takes me a little bit longer. It takes me about 15 minutes. Just watch.
Now you finished it and went in.
And I pause right as I finish it, and now
You're mixed?
I'm mixed. I'm solved, and now remixed, ready to go into the move.
Perfect.
Right?
Great.
So, now to get it to their hand, there's a couple different ways we can do this as well. So I have to basically do, again, this is the exact same unsolve, two-handed one solve as the cube effect solve, okay? So the cube is now mixed only with the color orange solved or ready to be solved. And now I'm going to try to get it into your hand without you knowing that one side's solved. So I usually, from this position, will show you that you can see your color on pretty much every side, right?
Right.
The color you're thinking of. Now, sometimes, depending upon how it goes, like if I'm doing a favorite color, I wouldn't say, do you see your color? Because I haven't asked them for their favorite color yet, because I pre-showed that. So I'll just say, can you see just about every color on every side of the cube? And sometimes I'll say, well, look, see on this side there's a pretty good mix of all the colors. Here I don't see any red, but you'll see red pretty well mixed throughout.
Right.
Right? If I'm trying to get them, everybody knows they're thinking of a specific color, which if you're doing the hat method, that's how they know. Then I would say something along the lines: can you see your color pretty well mixed on every side of the cube? And the orange actually is on every side, so it's very easy for them to see that.
Sure.
Okay. So I said, go ahead and hold one hand out for me just like that, and that's the action I do to do the first move to get that first line of orange. All right. So I'm here. I grab. If I have my key here of the two colors of orange, my thumb is going to grab the orange down here. My left thumb is going to grab the top one. I'm going to spin it. So now I have this, but they can't see that because it's from this position.
Sure.
Okay? Take your other hand. As I say that, I spin around as if I'm going to basically mime this. And that's when my hand turns the cube. So now I have the two sides here.
Right.
And as I come down, that's when I do the last move to get the color solved.
Which we're going to go over in more detail in the
Absolutely.
mix.
So
Okay.
the actual techniques of getting that, it's a little bit different here because I'm doing a different motion and timing, so I
Sure.
don't want to explain it here. But the actual technique of the moves, you'll learn in the section that teaches the unmix.
Okay.
Okay? So again, my thumb is going to come to the orange here, turn it, come around, and on the way down, that's when it's going to solve in their hand.
And then my hand goes on top.
Right. And now their hand's on top. Everybody say the color, they lift their hand, and now I always like to do this sort of turn
Sure.
to build the tension and then release it with the one color being solved.
When you show that the orange is gone,
Mm-hmm.
you may not know the answer to this. Do you believe they are thinking, "Wow, orange has disappeared from the cube," or are they intuitively going,
Different people do different things. Some
Okay.
people see where it's going. Some people have no idea.
No
They think it's
idea.
gone completely from the cube. So
Right.
different people react differently to that. And you'll get some really strong reactions. But even skeptical people really internalize that, like, whoa, that happened in my hands.
Yeah.
Because they really did just see it. Now, you made an important point. When I did the performance at the castle, it's for a little bit of a larger audience. And so some of these moves are a little bit more obvious versus up close. So up close, kind of like a top change, you don't even see that happening, all right? So here, I'm doing the action as I'm looking you in the eye. So it's done on pretty much every side. As I look up, that's when I do the first move,
"Yeah,
right? So hold your hands out. I can look back at the cube. I'm going to hold your hands out for me just like this. So one hand's on top, one hand's on the bottom. And that's all done while I'm looking you in the eye.
Yeah.
And they don't see any of that. In a
Right.
close-up environment, it's like I did nothing, right?
Right.
And so that just goes in their hand. It still looks mixed. They still assume the colors on every side. And now you can go ahead and do it.
Sure.
Right? I do the same thing when I do for larger audiences. I still feel like it flies by, but if someone's paying really close attention, they have an idea of where it's going, they might have thought that I did something. Although it's inconceivable to think that I actually did what I did, because it doesn't make sense that I could solve one side that quickly with basically 3 moves. Right. So you had an idea of basically showing the cube, right, as far as all the colors on all sides, as you're doing like a fake mix or something like that. So it looks like you're actually mixing the cube and seeing the color on every side, and that way you're still mixing it as you do it. It's like, go ahead and hold your hand out for me.
Right.
So it doesn't seem like I'm just stopped and then mixing again. I think that's what you're trying to say. Which I think is something certainly worth playing with. I haven't done that, but I think it's something that's worth exploring if you think that's a concern for the environments that you perform in.
Sure.
Okay? So that goes in their hand, and then you proceed with it as we've just shown.
Great.
All right.
All right. So we're going to learn all of the moves on how to make cube effects work.
Absolutely. The first move we're going to start off with is going to be the cube effects mix. When we have the cube, I always start with white facing me. So I have white facing me as my key color. So white's always my key color when I'm performing this. And I also have a secondary key color for starting off the move, which is orange. Now, depending upon the cube that you're using, you might have a different arrangement of stickers that can actually be on different cubes in different orientations. So
or different colors altogether. They can have pink and whatever.
Absolutely right. So as long as you, for the sake of this, always use white for this one. You can always change it up later on. But use white and try to use orange if you can, so you know that your cube's matching mine exactly.
Sure. Let me make a point real quick. So the regular configuration in America for a Rubik's Cube is if you were to put white towards the ceiling, yellow would be opposite of it, and then it would go around the cube orange, blue, red, green. That's the regular configuration in America.
So it shouldn't be a problem for most cubes. I just want to mention that you might have a cube that's not.
Right.
So getting back to this, we're going to start off with the white facing you and orange on top. So the first move we're going to do is called a middle split. And basically what we're going to do is bring this middle orange down to between the white. So we're going to move this whole layer down 1. So to do that, I'm going to move the 2 right layers down and then the far right layer back up. So now you'll be in this position where you have 2 white lines. If you look at the bottom, that's where the other white line has gone to.
Just for reference, we're going to call it the middle split.
The middle split, right. There's also going to be the middle reverse split, which is putting it right back to where it came from.
Right.
So there's the middle split and then the middle reverse split.
Perfect.
Okay? Now there's another way of doing that middle reverse split, and that is by using your thumb instead, all right? So if it's here, my thumb is going to go on, my fingers are going to touch the top and the bottom layer, and you can push and undo that split that way as well.
Right.
That's how I actually do the final move, all right? So we're going to teach you the moves first, and then we'll go into the whole sequence.
Great.
So that's the middle split and the middle split reverse. Middle split, and then the middle split reverse with the thumb. So the next move you're going to need to know how to do is the 3-way split. It's basically what we're going to try to do is break the white up to all sides of the cube. So the 3-way split done from the solve position is going to look like this. What we're doing is basically bringing in one move, all 3 layers to a different side of the cube. All right? So again, it can be done from this position, or it can be done from the side. And it's going to change a little bit depending on how you orient it in the middle of the routine.
So let's slow that down and show what you're actually doing is you're moving this top layer here to the right, and you're moving the bottom layer to the left.
Exactly.
Great.
All right? And then, of course, the reverse of that just moves it right back to where it was. All right? And that's usually done, though, with my thumb on the middle top one here. And that's what actually does it. That thumb keeps that one color in place as the other hand moves the other 2 around in sections.
Got it.
All right. The other move that you're going to need to know for this mix is going to be the trigger finger. So a right trigger finger would be as if you hold the cube kind of like a gun with your thumb on the front and your middle finger on the back. Your index finger is going to, like shooting a gun, move the top layer over by 1.
Pull on the trigger.
Pull on the trigger. The left hand will reverse that same way.
Perfect.
Right? That's a right trigger finger and a left trigger finger. Those are the only 3 moves you need to know, and the reverse of those moves that you need to know to do the cube effects mix.
All right, so we are now going to do the false mix, or some people call it a false shuffle.
Right. Okay. So I would never do this from a solved state. I'm almost always doing the CubeFX mix first, right? And then I do the false mix from this position. But to teach it, of course, we're going to teach it from the solved state.
Right.
So this is going to be the move, and there's going to be essentially two moves we're doing in this. And a lot of it has to do with how you rotate the cube. And as I'm rotating it, I'm doing the same moves. By rotating it, I'm just reversing those same moves. But it looks like I'm constantly mixing and turning.
And to be clear, the false mix is essentially just a move that they can use to continue turning the cube to make it look like they're mixing it when really they're
Nothing's
keeping it
happening.
exactly.
You're keeping it in the CubeFX mix.
Right.
Exactly. So you can do this false mix 3 or 4 times in a row. And it's kind of designed that way. You can repeat it, and it looks like it's different every time, as long as the cube is mixed up. It's also, if you want to use another false mix, you can mix multiple false mixes, just like you would mix multiple false shuffles with card moves, okay? So the false mix that I use, we're going to start off just so it's a little easier from the same position we did the CubeFX mix, which is the white and orange. That way you can always follow along, make sure you're doing it right every single time. We're now going to do a middle slice and then rotate it 1 turn counterclockwise. My right hand is going to move the right layer up 1 and do 1 trigger finger. Do 1 more counterclockwise turn, and now the left hand is going to do exactly what the right hand just did, is move the left side up 1 and then a left trigger finger. And now if we do 1 more middle slice down, everything goes back in order, although the cube is now in a different position. It started here, but it ends up reversed, which is great when you're in a position like this where the cube is mixed, and every time you do the move, it really looks like the cube is now in a different position to mix because now you're seeing the other side. So it's helpful to, before you do another one, turn it once and then do it again, and now it really looks like the cube is constantly always being mixed. And you should still always put it back into your pattern from the CubeFX mix. So one or two things about the false mix is you really need to practice this a lot to be able to get this down. And so practice it, first of all, with solved cubes so you know you're actually false mixing. You don't want to be practicing with a mixed cube and accidentally be mixing it and not realize you're doing that, all right? So always practice with this type of cube. And then I recommend also practicing with your eyes closed. So close your eyes, go ahead and do it without looking at it with your eyes closed. So it's just becomes second nature to you. And the important thing is here when you're performing is sometimes you'll be in the middle, and this still on a very rare occasion happens to me, where if I'm in the middle halfway through and I'm saying something or interrupted, sometimes I can get out of that mix and forget exactly where I was in it. So I always try to get through one mix as quickly as possible, then I'll pause and say something, and then I'll continue to mix it again like so. After a while you've done it, it's kind of second nature. You don't have to worry about that as much, but especially in the beginning, try not to stop in the middle because that can screw you up if you're in the middle of the routine.
Right, and I would highly recommend to go back and study Carl's performance when he's doing this. If you watch him do this, I mean, it looks so natural. It just looks like he's talking to the audience and mixing the cube. It looks like it could be nothing more than just mixing the cube.
And that's what you really want. You want to get it into that mix, and this can also be done very, very nicely as almost a fake real solve. So once you get it in your mix, you can just sit there and do this same pattern as if you're analyzing it every single time and now doing some more turns, right? But I'm just doing the fake mix every single time. Once I get back to my pattern, now I can go ahead and I can do the unmix now, and I can solve it. Right. So that can be done like behind your back, right? So if you want to practice that behind your back, it looks like you solve it behind your back. Right? So turn around, do a bunch of fake mixes behind your back, and now it solves itself behind your back. That can be done as a fake real solve, right? So there's lots of advantages of having a good fake mix.
So here's a little bit of history, credits, and references for magic that uses the cube.
Erno Rubik is the inventor of the Rubik's Cube. He invented it in 1974. He was a Hungarian professor, architect, and inventor. Now, the first time we really see magic with a Rubik's Cube, or my first remembrance of it, would be Doug Henning on a special in the 80s. He was doing an effect that was created by Craig Nichols and is currently sold on Daryl's website, Fooler Duelers. It's called the Enchanted Cube.
That's right, Daryl owns the exclusive rights for that particular effect that uses Craig Nichols' gimmick to be able to instantly solve the cube, and it's a really, really cool effect that you can do. A lot of magicians already do. There's lots of different effects you're going to learn on this project. One of them is the effect of being able to match two cubes that one the spectator mixed and the other that someone that you just matched it, and there's different ways of doing that. First person that I know of that kind of created that general idea is Garrett Thomas, although Gregory Wilson also has a completely different method that's also fantastic. And I'm sure that other people have also come up with something very similar. It's a pretty, and there's only so many things you can actually do with the Rubik's Cube, so I think a lot of people end up arriving at the same ideas.
Now, if you're looking for something like blindfolded, there's two different things that have been out, which is Richard Osterland has something on a DVD, and so does Mark Elsden from Alakazam.
Yeah, and John's going to talk a little bit about how you do the blindfold, because you've done the blindfold routine quite a bit yourself. So in the bonus material, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. There's also several other DVDs that come out recently, including the Collaboration Cube, Rubik's Nightmare, and The Cube. You can check the credits section in just a second to get more information about those. I really highly recommend The Cube and looking at that. There's lots of really neat effects on there, and his main move can, of course, also be applied to our routines and interspersed as well. So it's a good reference to be able to use that as either a move to solve or as a fake mix.
There's lots of people out there, some good friends of ours that are doing Rubik's Cube magic. We recommend you kind of just look around and see what's out there.
Check out the work. I know Stephen Brundage has become pretty well known recently for Rubik's Cube stuff, and he's putting out a project that I definitely also highly recommend. Some is very similar to what we're doing, but also some very different stuff as well. So check out anything he does. It's absolutely fantastic, well thought out, and performed a lot.
Aussie Wynn has some nice work. He's not, to my knowledge, he hasn't published anything, but he does some nice work.
There's quite a few people that haven't published anything, like Aussie Wynn, my friend John Bourne, George Tate, Garrett Thomas, of course, and Shutagawa, as well as I'm sure quite a few others. But they all have very similar ideas with different methods, as well as their own unique effects and ways of presenting them that give it a whole different light with their character.
Now, we've made every effort to give you as much material as we possibly can on magic with the Rubik's Cube. Some of the stuff we just can't give you because the information belongs to someone else, like a lot of the
names we just mentioned. Yeah.
Exactly. But we've given you a thorough project here, which is it's got a lot of material.
So there's a lot of information we're about to throw at you, so strap in and get ready. So let's get into the actual Cube Effects mix sequence. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a middle split. So now there's an orange in the center. We have two white lines that we're now going to split using the three-way split. So now, but when I do this three-way split, I'm going to turn it so now the green is on top. When the green's on top, that's when I do the three-way split. So now you'll see there's two white, and two white. But green will be on top. We're now going to rotate it one more time. So now the white line that was on the bottom is now on top and going across. And I'm going to do another three-way split with that so that you have this little two white sequence with red on either side. And then the final move is I use my left trigger finger to pull that towards me. And the reason why I'm doing that is if you look at the side of the cube, you'll see there's still one line of blue here and one line of green here that I want to split up so it doesn't look like there's an order. So by doing that one trigger finger, now you'll see that on every side of the cube there's no more than two of any color that's in place. Now this cube can be rotated and oriented any way. All you have to do to figure out where your key is, essentially, what I call the key, is to find the white center and orient this towards you. So now the double white's oriented toward you. There's only one white center, so that's what you're looking for, is that white center, and you want that to be pointing towards you, not to the side or not away from you. Once you're here, now you can leave it in this position, or you can do a false mix, which is what we'll teach you next.
Excellent. So anytime in this DVD that we say we're doing the Cube Effects mix, this is what we're looking at.
Right.
And like he said later on, he's going to teach you the unmix, which is essentially the reverse steps of what you just learned.
Right, and there's several different ways to do that unmix depending upon which part of the routine you're doing.
All right. Now we're going to learn the unmix.
Okay. So first of all, this is solved now, so I'm going to put it into the Cube Effects pattern.
Now I'm going to do the unmix once just to show you that basically I'm just reversing those moves that we just did to put it into the pattern. I'm going to pick up the cube. My key of the white in the center is pointing towards me. My right trigger finger is going to push over, so now I have lines on the side. I'm now going to get a white bar here by doing the reverse of the middle split. Rotate the cube so the green's on top. My thumb's going to go to the bottom where the orange is, do one more reverse middle split, and then I can do the middle slice reverse, and now I end up right back to where I began. So we'll do that in slow motion now. Let's get into the cube effects pattern. We're in the pattern. This is important here, this finger position of being on the white and on the yellow on the back with the thumb and middle finger of the right hand is important because that's where you, A, are able to do your trigger finger move, and B, it's already in that position to be able to do the first reverse of the middle split. Okay? All right, so now we're here, but I don't want the audience to see this. So it's important as we angle it that this is here and they're only seeing this part for a second.
Right.
Okay? My right thumb.
So from the side, the audience is actually seeing.
This here's what they should be seeing is kind of like this here,
Okay.
and it's only for a split second because this happens really quick at speed, right?
Yes.
All right. So now this helps give me my finger position to be able to know pretty much where I'm at on the cube. So you always want to do it the same because eventually you're going to be able to, for some of the other ones, to get into a position where you can show all the sides like this. This is a nice little show, which I use a lot in the one-handed solves. All right, but for this, what's going to happen is from this position, I'm going to be here. My thumb's going to come around. It's going to go to the orange and the top with a white split here, and that's important because when I do the final mix, it's already in position to be able to do the last.
Okay.
Okay, because you want that to be right in that position. You don't have to fumble or get anywhere else to do that last move. That's the mix.
Sure.
All right. So again, at speed, it's going to look like this. This is going to be the mix. The unmix can be done very quickly as well.
Right.
All right. And so you can show it also in pauses and then do the unmix. And sometimes when I do this with both hands, one of the ways I'll do it will be in terms of waves. So I'll come over, I'll do the first move, I'll kind of cover it, and then I'll do the second move as I kind of wave over the front, and that kind of solves it. And then as I come over here, I do the final move, and then wave on the top here. So now it really feels like you're just waving and it's solving itself as you wave it.
Right.
And don't think you always have to do it fast. It's also possible to do it slowly. So you can have it get to this position where you're showing the show, and then you can kind of do a very slow unmix as you're just turning the cube, and it still looks very magical because they don't know what's happening yet.
Right.
Right? So that's probably the best way to start off is with the two hands, get used to that, and then move on to the right hand or the left hand, whichever you feel more comfortable with.
Great.
Okay, so now we're going to show you the left-handed unsolve or unmix. Now, this I usually will do when I do the two-handed unmix. This gives me the ability to solve two cubes simultaneously, one in each hand. I also sometimes will do this as a behind-the-back toss or under the hat type of a mix. So we'll show you some performance of those in just a second. This is a bit more advanced. It's a bit more difficult to explain and understand. So we'll give you a little overview first, and then we'll give you the specifics as much as possible of the finger positioning because it's a bit difficult to explain this one.
Great.
All right? So first we get into the cube effects mix. Now my left hand alone is going to do the unmix. I pick it up with the key in the right position facing me, do a reverse trigger finger with the left hand. That puts me into the first phase of getting into the display position. And now I do two moves simultaneously to get into the display position. Now I'm going to do a three-way reverse split to get to the solved, and then of course the final reverse middle split to get all the way to the solved position. So let's go over that again in a little bit more detail now. We're going to get into the cube effects mix. I pick it up with my finger positions with the thumb on the orange and the middle finger on the red in the back. Do a reverse trigger. And now my left hand's going to come basically as if you're going to do the show that you would do with the right hand, but this is the display position. So from that display position, this is what the finger position looks like underneath. My pinky, these two fingers, the middle two fingers, and then the index and the thumb are covering out these outer layers. I usually will move the bottom layer out just a little bit, so it's a little bit out jog. So if you see that, it's a little bit out of position. And that allows me to take my pinky, and my pinky, the first knuckle, is going to push back on this back layer, as my thumb will push on the other layer. And that's what allows me to do both at the same time, and then turn the cube so the red is facing out and re-grip in the same exact grip as I was in just a second ago, but this is now the display position. Do the exact same move again, and it's mostly your thumb and your pinky that is doing that. But under cover of the fingers, it now looks like it's solved, and then you can do the reverse middle split to get it completely undone. So let's go over that one more time. Left hand picks it up from the center, the red and the orange, red and the orange centers. Reverse middle split. Get into the display position. Finger positions look like this. The thumb and the pinky are going to undo the reverse three-way split. Turn the cube to get back into the pattern so that the red and white are on the bottom, and do another reverse three-way split to get into what looks like the solved position, and then the final reverse middle split to unsolve it. All right, so now we're going to get into the explanation for how to do the one-side solve.
Great.
So the first thing you need to do is be able to solve one side from an actual legitimately mixed position. The other DVD that you put out, How to Solve the Cube, will tell you how to solve one side, but what's important about this is you don't want to get the bottom layer completely solved. You only want the one color solved. So you're basically doing it incorrectly, which is actually easier to do because you're not matching any colors other than the one color you're trying to solve. So for this explanation purposes, since all of our keys have been white, we will use white as the color we're going to solve. Of course, that's going to vary depending upon what color they choose or what color you want to force. All right, so the first thing you need to do is you need to get a cross of white with the white center. So you're going to look for any other whites that are in the center positions and then move those to make that cross. Now, this technique can be found on the How to Solve the Cube DVD, but the important thing is we're not trying to match the orange with the orange. Normally you would try to get that to match like this, but we don't want that. We're not trying to actively not do it, but we're not trying to do it. So sometimes it will happen, but for the most part, we want it to be all mixed up so that at the end of this, it looks more mixed except for that side. So I'm only looking for the white centers, turning them and getting them into that cross position. And oftentimes you'll get lucky and get one or two other ones also in that position. Similarly, when you go to do the corner pieces, we're not looking to get them to match any colors. So I'm not trying to match the red with the red when I'm going to do this. I'm just trying to put it into any position I can as quickly as possible to be able to get that bottom side solved. And in the overview, we go over a little bit more detail about how the timing and rhythm of how to do this. So here I have the bottom side solved, and you'll see that the first layer, for the most part, isn't solved all the way around. So if I were just to hold that cube, it would look like from every side that it's mixed, unless you look really closely, you would see that white is missing.
Right. Now, if you have any trouble with this at all in terms of getting the one side solved, really you should go to the other DVD.
Yeah.
You should focus on just... it's actually the first 3 steps or 4 steps.
And it's really not hard to learn. Anybody can really learn this with just a little bit of practice.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of conceptualization to get through it, but it's just repetition. You got to practice it to be able to get to that point where you have the one side solved.
Now, if you are going back to the DVD to watch this portion, the very first step has you putting the white ones around the yellow up here.
Right.
Now, you're going to need to learn to avoid that step altogether.
Right.
And that just takes practice. Again, that's on the DVD, but you do not want to do the first step. That's a beginner method.
I never learned that method anyways.
Yeah.
I always skipped right ahead. I think it was, to be honest, a pointless method to start with.
Yeah.
I think it's easier just to learn how to get it right to the white from my own personal preference of learning the DVD. So that might help you with getting rid of one step to begin with.
Right.
All right? So once we're in the position where we have it white, I don't want to leave in this position for very long. I immediately take it and I do the Cube Effects mix to get it all mixed up, except I don't do the final trigger finger turn. And the reason I don't is there's no reason to do it because there's no line.
It's already mixed.
It's already mixed, right. So I don't do the final trigger finger. I leave it in the normal position. So the difference here is when I go to do the unmix, I'm not unmixing it as I normally would from here and then doing a trigger finger. I'm just putting it right in so that the key is always pointing to the left, my left in this case. So other than that, all you have to do is pay attention to that one color, and you're going to do the exact same thing as the Cube Effects unmix, where you get the white, and it's the exact same as the Cube Effects unmix. So we'll do that again. No trigger finger. And the timing of this is essentially this. I do the first part of this as I say, hold your hand out. And now I've gotten the first layer done. I then motion and say, then put your other hand on top. And as I'm saying that, I turn the cube. My thumb is in the position to do the final mix. And put your hand on top like this. And now I have it solved in my hand. But now they're getting in position to put it in their hand. So now when I put it in their hand goes on top. I oftentimes will also push down on their fingers, so that helps to cover the rest of the cube, so that now that they can't see that there's more of that one color missing. But you'll see as in his hand, it's done now with white. My preference is to have him slowly lift his hand, show every side missing the color, and then reveal it. You may want to have him hold his hand out and bring it out in sections, and then at the end reverse it so that when he lifts his hand, especially if he has a big hand, so it's automatically right there as the reveal. That's kind of your preference.
Great. All right, so we're going to learn the right hand, one-handed solve.
Solve, absolutely. All right, so we're going to start from the starting position, get it into the cube effects pattern. We're here. We're going to break this apart into two different sections. So there's going to be basically the first few moves, pause, show it as still being mixed. That way you're only a few moves away from being able to do the complete solve. All right? So the first half of this is going to be, you're going to get it with your key as normal. Use your right trigger finger to push it so now it's to the left. Your thumbs are already in the right position, just as before with the two-handed. To unmix, but you don't want to leave in this position very long. You want to get as quickly as possible to turning the cube so that you have the blue on the bottom and the front and the middle facing you.
Okay.
But your index finger is going to cover the outside layer, and my thumb is going to cover the other outside layer. So from this position, you can really see three separate sides that all look like they're mixed. But if I move my hand away, you'll see there's actually quite a lot of unmixing going on there already. You see the top and the bottom are already almost all the way solved, and then you have at least one or two layers in these that are also mixed, all right? So it's pretty solved. But from this position, you can't see that it's solved. It looks like it's really mixed. So basically, there's three more moves I need to do to get it to the complete solve from this pattern. My right finger is going to do the first two, and then I'm going to do the standard final move at the very end with the thumb doing the reverse middle slice. So my index finger is going to push over the bottom layer as my right thumb holds on to the top two layers. Now it's going to, my right thumb is going to move up as my left finger pushes over the the bottom two layers. And from that position, the front should now be solved. In this case, it's going to be green. You want to angle this back so they can't see that this side is done. So from the front, that camera should be angled back so they can't see this. And now your right thumb is in the right position to just do the last move here. Okay? All right, so let's go over that one more time. We're here. Get it into the cube effects mix. Right trigger finger. First unmix of the middle split into this position. And so you'll see the finger position from the bottom and from the side. My right index finger is going to push over the bottom layer as my left thumb continues to move up the cube. It's now in the position to do the final mix like so.
Great.
Right? Let's talk about a couple different options of how you can do that final unmix move to get that reaction of while the cube is solved. All right. So once we're in the mix pattern, we're going to do the unmix. From here, I can do these three moves, or the first two moves of this, right? I can do that as I'm just waving the cube. So as I'm waving the cube, I'm doing the moves, and that big motion covers the small motion. It feels like the cube is now solved, but it's still only one move away from being mixed. So there's a couple ways I usually do this. The first one is to bring my left hand forward, and by bringing that hand in as I do the unmix, and then to show it like this, that really helps to hide the fact that I'm doing one last move, because bringing that extra hand in and framing it really makes it feel like it was already done when they saw the green.
Right.
So that's the first way, and I'll do that again here. So it's already in the pattern where I'm almost solved. I give it a little wave and shake. Now it looks like it's mixed, and as I bring my hand forward, it just comes down and it's solved. So even from behind, that looks pretty good.
That's great.
Okay? And from the front, it also looks great as well. Another way of doing the final reverse middle split with the thumb is to give it a little toss. All right? So I'm in the position, halfway there. I do the unsolve. We're in this position here. And instead of bringing the other hand in, I can do this move as I just give it either a small toss or a big toss. And as long as the cube is silent, it looks like the cube just solves as you throw it in the air.
Right.
All right, another way that I do the one-handed solve is by handing it to a spectator, all right? So this can look like this, where I have the cube. It's in the mix. I do the first two moves to get it into the display position where you can show three sides. I say, hold your hand out. And as I hold my hand out, that motion coming forward, I do the first move. Once they hold their hand out, I move forward. I do the second right finger move, and then the final as I place it in their hand to have it solved right in their hand. And that's done as I'm looking them in the eye, so as soon as they look down, it's in that solved position. It's good.
This is really nice for the spectator you're doing it to.
Right.
I've noticed that when I watched you do it, it looked cool, but for the spectator, it's
A really strange feeling, yeah.
It is, because you can't see really anything happening until it just like sets in your hand, and it's like
Boom.
yes.
Yeah.